Hello dear chess fans, my name is Eugene Grinis. Welcome to my free chess school from beginners to advanced, open for everyone who want to improve own game. This video is intended for the beginners. No game is lost without a mistake being made, be it a blunder or a slight inaccuracy, an error in the calculation of variation or in the assessment of a position. In this video we will be dealing with mistakes which are committed in the initial stages of a game. We will dwell on errors which involve a breaking of the basic principles of opening play. Our attention will be mainly devoted to typical tactical mistakes and their consequences. There are some practical opening rules for beginners which are usually worth remembering. These rules are: 1. Open with either the e-pawn 1, e2, e4 or the d-pawn 1, d2, d4. 2. Wherever possible, make a good developing move which threatens something. 3. Develop knights before bishops. 4. Pick the most suitable square for a piece and develop it there once and for all. 5. Make one or two pawn moves in the opening, not more. 6. Do not bring your queen out early. 7. Castle as soon as possible, preferably on the king's side. 8. Play to get control of the center. 9. Always try to maintain at least one pawn in the center. 10. Do not sacrifice without a clear reason. 11. Complete your development before you attack. 12. Pay attention to your opponent's moves. 13. Avoid exchanging bishops for knights. And rule number 14. Fight for space. Any move which is in accordance with the basic principle is normal. Any move which is not is abnormal. Now let's take a look at the following game: e4, e5, knight f3, developing the knight and attacking the e5 pawn. d5. Black doesn't protect the e5 pawn, but attacks the e4 pawn with his pawn. This opening has no name. Pawn takes pawn on d5. Queen takes pawn on d5. Knight c3, developing the knight and attacking the queen. Queen to a5. Queen e2, attacking the e5 pawn. This is not a good move. White brings his queen into the game too early. Rule number 6. Beta was bishop c4, developing the bishop, and white was beta here. Queen e2 was played. Knight c6, developing the knight and protecting the e5 pawn. d3, bishop to g4, developing the bishop and pinning the knight. Bishop d2. This is a mistake. Knight d4, attacking the queen. Queen takes pawn on e5, check. This is a blunder. White paid no attention to black's threat. Rule number 12. Queen takes queen, check. Knight takes queen, attacking the bishop on g4. Now, can you find mate in 1 in this position? Please pause the video. Knight takes pawn on c2, check mate. Mate with knight and bishop. Now let's go back to e4, e5, knight f3, d5. In this position, white can also play knight takes pawn on e5. Let's take a look at another game from two club players. Pawn takes pawn on e4. Bishop to c4, developing the bishop and attacking the f7 pawn with knight and bishop. Queen to g5, attacking the knight on e5. Knight takes pawn on f7. This is a blunder. Queen takes pawn on g2, attacking the rook on h1. Rook f1. Bishop g4, attacking the queen. Bishop e2, the only move. Bishop takes bishop. Queen takes bishop on e2. King takes knight on f7. Black has an extra knight. Queen c4, check. King e8. Queen takes pawn on c7. Knight d7, developing the knight. Queen takes pawn on b7, attacking the rook on a8. Rook b8, attacking the queen. Queen takes pawn on a7. Now white has got 3 pawns for the knight. Bishop to c5, developing the bishop and attacking the queen. Queen to a6. Knight g to f6, developing the knight. Knight c3. King to f7. Beta was queen takes pawn on h2 with a winning position. Knight c3, king f7 was played. Queen c4, check. King to g6. A bad move. Black should play king to e7 with a winning position. King g6 was played. b3, and this is a huge mistake. The only right move was knight e2, threatening knight e4 check, winning the queen. But b3 was played. Rook b4, attacking the queen. Queen to e2. Knight e5. Black has a winning position now. Knight a4, attacking the bishop. But knight f3, check. King d1. Knight d4, attacking the queen. Queen a6. Now, can you find mate in 2 in this position? Please pause the video. Queen f3, check. King e1. Knight takes pawn on c2, checkmate. Mate with knight and queen. Now let's take a look at the following game. e4, e5, knight f3, developing the knight and attacking the e5 pawn. Knight c6, developing the knight and defending the e5 pawn. Bishop c4, developing the bishop to the strong diagonal. Knight f6, developing the knight and attacking the e4 pawn. Do you know the name of this opening? This is the two knights defense. White continues with d4. Another theoretical continuation for white is knight g5, attacking the f7 pawn. Black plays d5, pawn takes pawn, knight a5, attacking the bishop on c4. This is called two knights defense, classical. Let's go back to the game. d4 was played. Pawn takes pawn on d4. White castles. A theoretical move. d6. This is a passive move. Beta was a theoretical continuation. Knight takes pawn on e4. The sharp variation continues as follows. Rook e1, pinning the knight. d5, defending the knight on e4. Bishop takes pawn on d5. A bishop sacrifice. Queen takes bishop. And now knight to c3, attacking the queen and the knight. The d4 pawn cannot take the knight since it is pinned by white's queen. Queen a5, knight takes knight on e4, bishop to e6, knight e4 to g5, attacking the bishop. Black castles queen side. Knight takes bishop on e6. Pawn takes knight. Rook takes pawn on e6 with an unclear position. Let's go back to the game. d6 was played. Knight takes pawn on d4. Bishop e7. But what happens if black takes the e4 pawn with his knight? Then follows rook e1, pinning the knight on e4, d5, defending the knight, knight takes knight on c6, pawn takes knight. Now rook takes knight on e4, check. Pawn takes rook. Bishop takes pawn on f7, check, deflecting the king. If king takes bishop, then queen takes queen, winning. And if king to e7, then bishop g5 check. King takes bishop, the only move. Queen takes queen, winning. Let's go back to the game. Knight takes pawn on e4, bishop e7 was played. Knight c3, developing the knight and protecting the e4 pawn. Black castles. h3, covering the g4 square. Rook to e8. Rook to e1, developing the rook. Knight d7 was played. This is a huge mistake. Black should play knight takes knight on d4, queen takes knight, knight d7, for example bishop f4, developing the bishop, bishop f6, attacking the queen with an equal position. Let's go back to the game. Knight d7 was played. Now follows bishop takes pawn on f7 check, sacrificing the bishop. But what is white's idea? King takes bishop. What now? Can you find white's move? Please pause the video. White plays knight to e6, attacking black's queen that is trapped. King takes knight on e6. Now, can you find mate in 2 in this position? Please pause the video. Queen d5 check. King to f6, the only move. Can you find mate in 1 in this position? Please pause the video. Queen f5, checkmate. Gueridon mate with queen and pawn. The white queen smothers the black king with black's own pieces blocking the escape. Now let's take a look at the beautiful Grandmaster game played in Russia in 1912. e4, c5. What is the name of this opening? You should already know it. This is the Sicilian Defence, a very popular opening that normally leads to a sharp game. Knight f3, developing the knight. There are many popular continuations for black in this position, such as d6, for example d4, c takes d4, knight takes pawn on d4, knight f6, knight c3, a6, neither variation, or knight c6, developing the knight, or e6. But in the game, knight f6 was played, attacking the pawn on e4. This is a less popular Nimzowitsch-Rubinstein variation. Knight c3, d5, attacking the e4 pawn. Pawn takes pawn on d5. Knight takes on d5. d4, e6. Knight takes knight on d5. Queen takes on d5. Black could also try e6 takes d5. It could follow bishop b5 check, bishop d7, bishop takes bishop check, knight takes on d7, white castles, bishop e7, with a slightly better position for white. Let's go back to the game. Queen takes on d5. Bishop e3. Pawn takes on d4. Knight takes pawn. a6. This is not the best move. Knight c6, developing the knight, was better, but a6 was played. Bishop e2, sacrificing a pawn on g2. The opening has gone in favor of white, who is ahead in development. In view of this, black should have declined the offer to take the g-pawn. But black takes the pawn with the queen. Bishop f3, attacking the queen. Queen to g6. Queen to d2, developing the queen. e5, attacking the knight on d4. But white ignores the threat and continues his mobilization. White castles queen side, sacrificing the knight. Black takes the knight on d4. Bishop takes pawn. White has a clear lead in development. Knight c6, developing the knight, was played. Black could play better. Bishop e7. Then we play rook h to e1, pinning the bishop. For example, knight d7, Now follows rook takes bishop check, the best move. King takes rook, queen e1 check. If king to f8, then we play bishop c5 check, king g8. If knight takes bishop, then can you find mate in 1 in this position? Please pause the video. Rook d8, checkmate. Let's go back to king g8, queen e8 check, knight f8, the only move, queen takes knight, checkmate. Back rank mate with queen and bishop. If black plays king to d6, then can you find mate in 2 in this position? Please pause the video. Bishop b6 check, queen d3, the only move, rook takes queen, checkmate. If black plays king to d8, then we play queen a5 check, king to e7, rook e1 check. If now king to f8, then can you find mate in 1 in this position? Please pause the video. Queen d8, checkmate. If black plays king to d6, then follows bishop e5 check, king to e7. If knight takes bishop on e5, then can you find mate in 2 in this position? Please pause the video. Queen takes knight check, king d7, the only move, queen e7, checkmate. If king to e6, then we play rook bishop to g3 check, king f6. Can you find mate in 2 in this position? Please pause the video. Bishop h4 check, queen g5, the only move, queen takes queen, checkmate. Let's go back to this position. Rook e1 check, queen e6. We play Rook takes queen check. Pawn takes rook. Black has two rooks for white's queen. Bishop takes pawn on g7, attacking the rook. Rook g8, attacking the bishop. Queen g5, check. If now king to f7, then can you find mate in 1 in this position? Please pause the video. Bishop h5, checkmate. If king to e8, then can you find mate in 1 in this position? Please pause the video. Bishop h5, checkmate. If king to d6, then we continue with queen e4 check. King e7. If king to c5, then follows queen c7 check. Queen to b5. Now, can you find mate in 3 in this position? Please pause the video. Bishop e2 check. King a4. Can you find mate in 2 in this position? Please pause the video. Queen to c3. A move without a check, threatening mate in 1. And black has no defense. For example, knight b6, queen a3, checkmate. Let's go back to this position, or check, king to e7, queen h4 check, king f7, bishop c3, the best continuation, rook g1 check, king d2, king g8, queen d8 check, knight f8, bishop b4 attacking the knight with 2 pieces, king g7, queen takes knight, check, king g6, the only move, bishop e4 check, king to h5, queen f3 check, king h6, bishop f8 check, king g5, bishop e7 check, king h6, the only move. Now, can you find mate in 2 in this position. Please pause the video. Queen h3 check. King g7, the only move. Queen takes h7, checkmate. Let's go back to this position. Queen e1 check. Queen e6. Then we play Queen b4 check. If now king to e8, then we play rook e1, pinning the queen and winning the game. If king to d8, then follows queen a5 check, b6, bishop takes pawn on b6 check, king to e8, rook e1, pinning the queen. For example, knight takes bishop on b6, rook takes queen check, bishop takes rook, queen takes knight, rook d8, queen takes pawn on a7 with on a6 with a winning position for white. Let's go back to the game. Bishop takes pawn, knight c6 was played. Bishop f6, sacrificing the bishop. Queen takes bishop on f6. After bishop e7, we play bishop takes knight on c6 check, pawn takes bishop. Now, can you find mate in 2 in this position? Please pause the video. Queen d8 check. A queen sacrifice. The queen has to be taken by the bishop. Can you find mate in 1 in this position? Please pause the video. Rook takes bishop on d8, checkmate. Mate with rook and bishop. Well worth remembering. Let's go back to the game. Bishop f6 was played. Queen takes bishop on f6. Rook h to e1 check. Bishop e7. If bishop e6, then can you find mate in 1 in this position? Please pause the video. Queen d7, checkmate. The queen cannot be taken by the bishop since it is pinned. Let's go back to the game. Bishop e7 was played. Bishop takes knight on c6, check. King f8. If pawn takes bishop, then can you find mate in 1 in this position? Please pause the video. Queen d8, checkmate. The queen cannot be taken. Let's go back to the game. King f8 was played. Now, can you find mate in 2 in this position? Please pause the video. White plays Queen d8, check, sacrificing the queen. That has to be taken. Bishop takes queen. Now, can you find mate in 1 in this position? Please pause the video. Rook e8, checkmate. Back rank mate with rook and bishop well worth remembering. Okay, that's the lesson for today from the Eugene Grinis Chess School. I hope it was useful and you enjoyed it. If so, push likes, subscribe to my YouTube channel and leave comments. Thanks for donations to my YouTube channel. You can find corresponding links in the video description. And the last question for today. Did you find an Easter egg in this video? It is all about viewing the video online, on YouTube or Facebook. Only then it is possible to open the description and to look in it for Easter egg. It is also possible to look what new appears in the last 10 seconds of the video, paying attention to Easter egg. Goodbye.